In this movie, we will introduce some topics that can make your program a bit more professional. You can use the error provider control to display error messages to the user and to perform field level validation, rather than validate an entire form. You already know how to validate user input using the try-catch method and through if statements and message boxes. In addition to these techniques, you can use the .NET Error Provider component, which shares some characteristics with the web validation controls. The Error Provider component is found under the Components section of the toolbox. By double-clicking, the Error Provider is placed in the Components tray and is now available to your form. We will discuss how to display error messages directly on the form using this Error Provider component, rather than pop-up messages and message boxes, which sometimes can be annoying and a nuisance to your user. Using the Error Provider component, you can make an error indication appear next to the field in error. This is similar to how validator controls behave in web applications. The example provided performs field level validation on 3 fields: the first name field, the last name field, and the state field. Now, of course, all of these could be used if they were deemed to be critical or necessary data. But for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm simply using those 3 fields in this demonstration: first name, last name, and state. So you can see the difference between a field level which is validated and one which is not validated. I'll first run the program so we have an idea how it works, and then we'll look at the code. If I enter the first name, and then instead of entering the last name, if I attempt to skip over it, as you can see, the Error Provider indicator, the exclamation mark, indicates this is a required field. As an additional note to the user, I have caused the last name label to be highlighted in red. This is not done automatically, but it can very easily be done within your code. The field level validation technique that is being used here is not going to allow the user to continue until they enter a last name. They then can continue to their street, which they can enter or not. They can then enter the city or skip to the state, which, as you can see, is allowed to happen. If I enter the state and then skip to the zip code, all that is allowed. If I remove the state and attempt to go to the zip code, as you can see, the Error Provider is once again displayed. If I remove after entering a state, if I remove the first name and attempt to go to another field, once again you see that the Error Provider is requiring the user to enter these 3 fields. That is the first name, last name, and the state. We'll stop the program and take a look at the code that's making this behave in this manner. And if we understand one, then we can apply the logic to the rest of them. This is using the validating event. Each control on the form has a causes validation property that is set to true by default. When the user finishes an entry and presses the tab or clicks on another control, the validating event will, for that control, just left. That is, the event that occurs the causes validation property of the new control, that is the one receiving the focus, is set to true. You can leave the causes validation property of most controls set to true so that the validation does occur. However, setting the causes validation to false on a control such as cancel or exit to give the user a way to bypass the validation if he or she does not want to complete the transaction. In the validating event procedure, you can perform an error checking and display a message for the user. If the data value does not pass the error checking, then they set the cancel property for the E argument of the event to true. As you can see, is done here in the if statement. So what this is simply doing is causing the Error Provider to examine the first name text box. If the first name text box is empty, then the event will be canceled, therefore requiring that the user enter the data. And you can see the required field entry. This, of course, could be customized by you to say whatever you would like to say. Also, you notice that I caused the label of the corresponding first name label in this case to be colored red. Again, just to bring more attention to it to the user. That, of course, is optional. As you can see, the last name text box is handled in much the same manner, in that the error provider is examining the last name text box. If the event is true, that is, if the text length is 0 in this case, then the error provider is set into motion requiring the field. Once again, the label is set to red. And likewise, if the state text box does not have a 2-character field, in this case .text.length for the state text box, so now not only are we requiring a field to be entered, but now we're requiring a 2 digits or 2-character field. Again, the message is that there must be 2 characters, and the label corresponding is set to red as well. So once again, if I enter data in the 2 required fields, first name and last name, but then I enter Virginia, or I attempt to enter Virginia, it will not allow me to do so. If I only enter 1 character and go to the next item, it requires 2 characters. So once again, I'm required to enter these 3 fields. So to summarize, this cancels the validating event and returns the focus to the text box, making the text box somewhat sticky, that is, requiring the user to return to that control until the input passes the validation, whatever that validation may be. This sample program is available to you for further examine and use as you so desire.